screen in the sense that it's broken into tabs. Okay, so it's 3 different tabs. You're going to see, in this case, it's a dislocated worker funding screen. So the tab is called dislocated worker, and the fields that appear are only those valid funding streams for dislocated workers. One thing I forgot to mention, at the top of the View WIOA registration screen, the language that used to say the Public Law of 1998, etc., has been updated to reflect the new language for 2014. And back to the funding source screen. The next one is for adult. You're going to see all of the valid funding sources for adult, and then the name of the tab is adult. And then the middle tab is called Partner Programs, and this is represents the same data fields for all the program types, so that's dislocated worker, adult, and youth. So that's static for all of the programs. And then the same thing for the miscellaneous tab. Any questions on funding before we go to activities? Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. What's that?
If you need to switch between a dislocated worker and adult, you've made a mistake and register this person as a dislocated worker by selecting that program on the registration screen. And then once you get to a later screen, you're thinking, oh, this should have been an adult. In that particular case, Bill, you do have to delete the entire registration and enter it correctly under the correct program. Once someone's been registered into a program, that registration and that program is created, and to correct it, we don't allow you to just switch the program. You have to delete and start over.
Yes. It's still separately for dual enrollments. Yep.
Nancy? So you're talking about for a youth, will you only see the youth funding sources? Right. Right, because right now in OSMIS, if you have someone who's an adult and you go to the funding source page and try and select a youth funding source, you'll get an error. It won't let you select a youth funding source. So our thought was, why even show those if you're not allowed to select them? So if that person is registered as an adult, you're only going to see the adult funding sources. If at that point, and I think this was Bill's question, you realize, oh, it shouldn't have been adult. It should have been a dislocated worker. It should have been a youth. You do have to delete that registration and start over and put them in the correct program from the very beginning, which is really what you do now. You know, it's no different than the way the system works now. Being able to switch from one program to another on an existing registration isn't something we really thought of, I guess. And similarly with the question about dual enrollments, if you have someone you've enrolled as an adult and you're also putting them in dislocated worker, then yes, you have to manually create that second registration, and only the very basic information populates, you know, in the beginning of the registration. You still have to manually put in the rest of the information, even though it may be virtually the same for that adult and dislocated worker registration. Bernice? Yes, they will. You'll still be able to delete registrations. You'll still be able to delete a common measures billboard, and you know, all of those types of things will still work on the WIOA registrations as they have worked previously on the WIA registrations.
Good questions, thank you. Okay, you're going to see some differences on the enter activity screen for adult and dislocated worker. You're probably used to now the whole hierarchy that that applies to WIA participants. So what I mean by that is you have to have a core before you have a staff assistant before training and all these weird rules. Okay, with WIOA, the hierarchy rules are not effective, okay, as far as OSMIS is concerned, okay? So we have rearranged the enter activities screen, and you can see how it is now versus how it's going to be, but basically now it's grouped by core, staff assisted, intensive services, and training. And now we have the core and staff assisted core activities are grouped together in something called basic career services section. Group counseling has been, that activity is relabeled to just counseling. That's because after you select that activity, currently with called group counseling, there are two types, individual or group. We thought, well, that's kind of silly. Let's just call it counseling and then still have the same types of training, group or individual. Follow-up services was part of the staff-assisted core service section, and now it has its own section on the interactivity screen. And then intensive services has been relabeled to individual career/case management services. Okay, you're probably familiar with the training activity for WIA. Here's a picture of it with a type of training activity menu expanded, and then a comparison of what it's going to be come July 1st. Changes include now it's called apprenticeship training, and the new label is going to be registered apprenticeship. You're going to notice classroom training is no longer listed. It's here, but it's not here. US DOL considers classroom training to be a component of a number of other different types of trainings, which are now listed on the type of training menu. So for example, the new values that are there are incumbent worker training, training programs operated by the private sector, and transitional jobs training. Now with that being said, there are probably a lot of open classroom training activities right now, okay? The classroom training activities that are open will stay as is, okay? That will allow you to actually close the activity, end the activity, and move on. It just won't be available as a selection for a new activity come July 1st. All classroom trainings that are closed, in other words ended, they will stay as is. Okay, again, just moving forward, you won't be able to see, won't be able to select classroom training as a type moving forward.
Carrie's question from earlier was, you know, if they're in an activity and will they still be in that same activity if they carry over from WIA to WIOA? Does this kind of address that yeah, you're not gonna have to change anything, even if they're in something like classroom training and they're still active in that, it'll still show up as a classroom training activity that they're active in, even though we've now maybe removed classroom training as a selection for future types of training. So hopefully, if all goes well, there won't be anything that you need to do on those existing activities that are closed, unless you're adding some notes or something like that. And for activities that are open for these carryover people, you just continue to do your data entry like you normally would. Enter your end dates or any other information for the activity.
Also, table 4 in your packet shows the activities for adult and DW, how it is now and how it will be. So it's basically a summary page of all the changes that I just showed you. Any questions on the activity for adult and dislocated workers before I move on to support services? Yeah. No, it won't be. A different type of training. Okay, so on July 1st, if you're backdating the start date of the training, I believe how it's going to be set up is the begin date of the training activity has to be before July 1st. So it can't be July 1st or after. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, if you have the begin date June 30th, for example, the classroom training activity would still be there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so with a begin date of June 15th?
If it's one of the new categories, it won't, the system won't allow you to put it in with a date before July 1st. So if you wanted to put somebody into whatever it is, traditional or transitional jobs training, those activities are only available beginning July 1st. So if on the 2nd you want to put something in as of June 15th for that, you can't do that. But to go back to Phil's question, which I think is similar, you know on July 2nd you wanted to put somebody into classroom training with a back date of June 15th. I don't think that classroom training is even going to show up anymore after June or July 1st. So in Bill's case, I would ask you to contact either Paula or myself and let us look at it manually. Hopefully there's not going to be a lot of data entry for that one activity that's no longer going to be allowable after July 1st. But if you do run into that, I think you need to contact Paula or myself or even the OSMIS help desk, and we can probably do something manually for you on that, because yes. For those existing types of trainings that we have now and will still have after July 1st, yes, you will be able to backdate those to whatever and put it in after July 1st still. Correct.
Right. That's because the occupational skills training, there's no difference to that one. What it is now is what it will be.
But good questions. And Bill, I don't believe you ever make mistakes on data entry, but if you have something that needs to be backdated or changed and the system won't let you do it, contact us and we'll try and work it out with you.
Okay, yes. Krista, the question was, where should they go for the definitions of the new training types? Will that be included in the guidance as well? Okay, so WIOA support services, as Joe mentioned earlier, the support service screen for absolutely everybody, legacy WIA, WIOA carry-in and pure WIOA, the support service screen is going to be the same. You're going to notice a brand new column titled WIOA. And what the column will show is any support services received if the date received is on or after July 1st of 2015. Okay, that is going to be in the WIOA section. And then as far as the screen you go to enter a new support service, the menu is going to look similar as to what it does now, with one new option available, and that is called needs related payment, and then in parentheses DW only, so dislocated worker only. The existing value that says needs based payment will remain in there. Apparently they mean two different things, but there is going to be a business rule in there that you can only select the needs related payment only if your customer has enrolled in the DW program. So you won't be able to select it for youth or adults. Any questions on support service before we move on? Okay. And then next is the status screen. Okay, you're probably familiar with the status